Do you buy Calipari's excuse?
No. I mean, what do you expect them to do? You wait, just like when your teams were winning and they were celebrating, the opposing team and coaches waited until you got done with your celebration and they got in the line and they shook your hand. You know how this works, John Calipari. I get it. You actually had maybe the easiest route to the Final Four in the history of the game. Skip, all they had to do was beat a 12, a 13, and an 11 seed, and you make it.
Right.
And they blew it.
And they had Loyola Chicago just sitting there waiting. Okay.
And Skip, I get it. Because 100% of their points were scored by underclassmen. So we should not be surprised by this upset because you look at K-State, they got these upperclassmen doing work. So I'm not surprised, but John Calipari knows how this worked. And to use that excuse, they were celebrating. So I just man.
Wait, doesn't everybody celebrate when they win March Madness games?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, 17, 18-year-old kids, Skip. Hey, let's go shake the hand, then we go celebrate.
Oh, I see.
Whatever.
This is classic one-and-done Kentucky. It's classic Coach Cal, and I like him because you can't help but like him, but this is above it all, too cool. We're a little too arrogant for your taste over there because we don't want to stoop to have to go wait until you guys celebrate. Who are you guys? From where? And by the way, the upperclassmen of Kansas State, Thre had fouled out. Thre had fouled out, and all of a sudden, Kevin Knox and P.J. Washington came up small.
Couldn't make free throws.
They couldn't make free throws, and then Gilgeous-Alexander, who I've really come to like the last few games, but he came up real small down the stretch, and then he had a 3 to tie at the end and missed it. And the kids are like, AAU, we're out.
And the thing is, Skip, I mean, Kentucky has all these 5-star recruits. Hell, Manhattan, Kansas, you probably can't even see the star.
No.
They ain't got 1 star.
Yeah.
But this is what happens when you get a bunch of guys that's playing together, these freshmen, and they're going against upperclassmen. You're going to see more of this, so don't be disappointed. I got no problem. Look, Cal has accepted who he is. I'm a coach. I coach one and dones. Now, this is what's going to probably happen to you. Coach K has, hide behind that. Oh, they coming to Duke to get an education. But they one and done too.
They are.
Cal make no assertions about that. Coach K hides.
That's it for us. We'll be back Monday morning at 9:30 Eastern. Right now, Doug Gottlieb tells you the reason for John Calipari's failures in the tournament. The Herd starts now.
What up? Welcome in. This is The Herd, wherever you may be listening. However you may be making us part of your day. Thanks so much for allowing me to sit in for Colin Cowherd alongside Christine Leahy, who knows I just completely butchered.
A cross side. We're not alongside. We are across the way from each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but visually on TV, you're right next to me. If we do what's called the 2-shot,
well, if we
you're
do
right there. You're there.
Camera magic.
Christine Leahy there. Doug Gottlieb here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good to see you over there.
Good to see you as well. Guy, your jams were very
90s this morning?
Late 90s?
Yeah,
actually, it was more
Britney
early
Spears,
2000s in the makeup room.
Backstreet Boys.
It was a little Backstreet Boys.
You gotta do what you gotta do. I wish
very
it was
dreamy.
Cardi B.
You were fanning yourself as you're listening to Backstreet Boys, thinking of freshman year at BU, right? That's what you were doing?
No, I was not a boy band person. I liked Britney Spears. And that reminded me of college, yes.
Fair.
What was your college? Like when you were playing basketball, what was your pump-up song?
Honestly, this is kind of embarrassing, a little bit embarrassing.
Okay.
What's the I just wanna fly, put your hands around me, baby, what's that?
Oh, I know what you're saying.
Sugar Ray. It was a little Sugar Ray. There's also I believe I can fly. Right.
From Space Jam?
Huh?
From Space Jam.
Yes, but that's
Isn't that R. Kelly?
That's R. Kelly.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that. A little Pearl Jam, and then I had a wide variance. Like when you walk into a gym, everything's hip hop and rap. Yeah. And that was back in the bowdy, rowdy. Make 'em say, make 'em say, ah. Right, that was No Limit Soldiers back in the day. Yeah, that was. But we also had Fish, Bush, Rush, anything with an SH. Some people on the teams that I played with were also into. So there's a wide variance.
Really interesting music choices.
Yeah.
By you.
Yeah, and a little when I was at Notre Dame, a little Black Hawk, a little country.
Country?
Yeah, a little country. I mean, Michiana, Indiana's a little country, and Oklahoma State, obviously, home of Garth Brooks, a little country.
Whatever works for you, Doug.
Good enough. You asked. Careful of the question you ask. You're going to get a real and honest answer.
I did.
Anyway, Christine Leahy is alongside, or is cross-eyed?
Cross the way.
Cross the way.
I'm not cross-eyed.
Apparently sometimes I am cross-eyed. There's a couple expressions. Be careful what you wish for. You might get it, right? There's national parties celebrating when Kentucky loses. Kentucky did, in fact, lose to Kansas State. And listening to some people portray it, Kansas State is sisters of the poor U. Like they somehow managed to get together 5 basketball players of 0-star caliber and get them to play. Like Kansas State was actually second place in the Big 12. More remarkable by their win last night over Kentucky was not the win over Kentucky. It's that they did so mostly without Dean Wade, who is either their best or second best players, first team all Big 12. He played some of the game on a minutes restriction, but he's been playing with a foot that there's a stress reaction to, not a stress fracture to. And then Xavier Sneed, probably their most talented player, who's been their third best player all season, was saddled with foul trouble the entire late in the second half, and yet they still took down mighty Kentucky. There's a couple different things kind of at work here. First is, yes, I've covered the college basketball since I played college basketball, so we're going 20 years deep now, 15 years of covering it. And for those of you who only pay attention to Kentucky across the front of their chest and assume these are all lottery picks, that's not who this is who these guys are. They're not a very good shooting team. It's a new batch. They didn't have any upperclassmen, and there was some really good at the end of the season and some not so good. And they were beaten by a team which was not inferior, not superior, was a slight mix of the two. What I think is fascinating is, speaking of cliches or expressions that are overused, what doesn't kill us will make us stronger, right? That's one of them. But what about what builds us can ultimately take us down? I mean, look, the NCAA tournament's going to be taken down by too many of these Cinderellas. We can celebrate as much as we'd like the fact that Loyola of Chicago won again. How about this? Their third win in the tournament by a total of 4 points. If that's not Lady Luck, I don't know what is. And yet we can say, hey, this tournament is built upon upsets. America loves the Cinderella. But if Clemson wins 2 more games and Texas Tech wins 2 more games, it will be a tournament that we say is built on upsets that no one will watch. It's on cable this year in the Final Four, and people just, they say they want to see the Cinderella until the Cinderella is playing on TV, and then history tells us they don't. But the tournament is built on the idea that anyone can beat anybody. But what we really want is a nobody to almost beat a somebody, but then the somebodies to ultimately play. That's the same thing as John Calipari. It's built upon the idea that he does it all with one and dones and all with young players. And he has done it mostly with young players. He has done it mostly with one and done since he's gotten to Kentucky. He also at times has gotten lucky. Remember, in 2012, the one time he won a national championship with Kentucky, he did so with Anthony Davis, with a bunch of young. They weren't all young players. He did have some older pieces sprinkled in that did help him along the way. Some he didn't have this year. The other part is he kind of got lucky in that run. Syracuse was one of the top 3 teams in the country, and their center, Fab Melo, was suspended before the tournament began, and they didn't make it to the Final Four. North Carolina had lost to Kentucky that year by 2 points, and their point guard, Kendall Marshall, a first-round draft pick, broke his wrist, and they lost in the Elite Eight without Kendall Marshall. So he didn't actually play against the other 2 best teams in the country. There was some luck. And so while we're told he only wins with young players, and this is what young players do, it's mostly true. But oftentimes what we're built upon will, in fact, bring us down. Kobe Bryant's legacy of being an alpha, unabashed and unafraid to take the big shot, and the fact that he wanted everybody else. If you wanted to come and play for the Lakers, you had to be willing to put up with Kobe Bryant. You had to be willing to take the ball from Kobe Bryant. What made Kobe Bryant great has really had Kobe struggle late in his career because no one else wanted to come play with him. And I'm sure that's a tough adjustment in life now, in that you've always been the leader, the alpha, the singular driving force behind something, and it drove Shaq crazy, it drove coaches crazy, it drove teammates crazy, and other stars are like, yeah, it's not really what I want to do. And yet no one would argue with the incredible, transcendent talent that is Kobe Bryant. That's hard to deal with. The same is true with John Calipari. He was, I don't even call him a trendsetter, not really. He's one of those guys that is ingenious in that his timing has been perfect. He landed at the perfect job, at the perfect time, in the perfect place. Kentucky has always been about glitz, glamour, recruiting. Go out and try and get the best guys to come to campus, and we'll blow them away with how much we love Kentucky basketball and how bigger than life it actually is. So it's been. And you coincide that with the one-and-done era, and it's been a mutually beneficial relationship between the two. And I could easily make the case that this was his best coaching job. They actually ran nice offense last night. They actually moved the ball quite well. They just don't have that many guys that can put the actual basketball in the bucket. And they struggled to guard their mismatched pieces from Kansas State. And Kansas State, you got guys that have been told no, and Kentucky guys that have been told yes their whole life. And so when a ball is on the floor, I'm guessing the Kansas State guy is going to get it because the Kentucky guy makes a business decision. And so the same thing that this program was built upon, going out and find out the 20 best players in the country and trying to get 5 or 6 of them, which is exactly what he did. When you miss on a position, like point guard, when you don't recruit enough shooting, when your big guys are a little bit less than they used to be, and you have other players that don't want to hang around, Charles Matthews, for example, averaged 1 point a game last year for Kentucky. He had 18 last night for Michigan. Right? Like, what this program has been built around is the next group of the younger guys, the next group of younger guys. And some of it is a trend in college basketball, and that older guys don't want to hang around, don't want to be bench players. But they have been you come in, you get your work done, you go off to the NBA. What happens if you stay? Nobody ever talks about that. John Calipari tweeted this morning, I woke up this morning feeling sick as I did last night after the game. This is going to hurt for a while. For all of us, the players took it as hard as any team I've had when it ends. What they accomplished this year can never be taken away. To play like they played all year, coming together, battling through adversity, continuing to work every day and representing us the way they did is truly amazing. I'm not disputing any of that. But what happens when you are the first in, everybody's coming to take a shot at you. And as has been documented, Duke is now doing a better job of recruiting a higher end of one-and-dones. Duke also, let's be honest, benefits from the fact that Grayson Allen has remained in school all 4 years. That's why Duke is an 11.5-point favorite tonight against Syracuse. It's not because their freshmen are that much better, but they have an upperclassman to go along with those freshmen. And yes, the freshmen that they have do seem to shoot the basketball better, and shooting is paramount in success in both college and in professional basketball. So what happens when you're the first one in, what happens when you build a foundation based upon young players coming in, getting their work done, going to the NBA is, one, everybody copies it, and two, there's some ancillary factors that allow you to succeed. And three, because that's the culture you've built. Now all of a sudden you got a group of, I'd say 5 or 6 freshmen who probably shouldn't declare for the NBA draft. But do I stay and get recruited over? Do I stay and somehow there's a scarlet letter because I'm the guy who stayed? Do I transfer and go and play somewhere else? Or do I go to the NBA because that's what Kentucky guys do? And ultimately the cycle remakes itself. And Calipari starts and has some uneven performances and says, we're young, we're young, we're young. And he yells and he screams and the teams get better. But ultimately, 18 and 19 doesn't beat 21, 22, and 23. The story of the NCAA tournament is no different than the story of the 1988 Olympics, right? Do you know why we sent our NBA players to the Olympics? Because we got beat. And we got beat because they were sending men and we were sending boys. We were sending college kids, they were sending pros, and they beat us handily, and they were going to continue to beat us. So we're like, fine, we'll send our best guys. So men beat boys, seniors beat freshmen, and what Coach Cal established, what he created, is partially undoing the success of what he established and what he created. All right, we'll get to the NBA upcoming next. The NBA has a major problem on its hands. And believe it or not, the Philadelphia 76ers are the example of that problem. Not in their previous failures, but in their success this year. I'll prove it to you next. Across from Christine Leahy, I'm Doug Gottlieb. This is The Herd.